So a very warm good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for joining in on a Sunday morning. So we are here to discuss a very interesting and useful topic, how to reduce a backlog of 30 million litigation matters in our courts. Before we start, here is a bit about what ILA does and what is our vision mission. So our basic goal is to improve our profession and serve our members. So we do this by way of hosting several programs and we offer a few services to promote the professional growth of our members. Then we also offer development opportunities to the law students, budding legal professionals, and anyone who requires any opportunities for that matter. We have recently started with a mentoring platform and a networking platform as well, which helps anyone to connect with lawyers all across India. We also aim to make sure that we strive to have a public understanding and build respect to the rule of law. And while we do all of this, um, the main goal is to create a united voice of the country's legal professionals. So also I would definitely like to announce a recent initiative that we have launched, which is a pro bono legal clinic. So we do this by way of offering free or the very minimum cost legal services to those who require all across India. So you can get in touch with us after this session if you would like to enroll yourself to offer these kind of services. So the ILA presence is all over India and we have about 70 plus chapters. You can see the city names here on the screen. So I'll not take much of your time. I'll hand it over to Sambhav, President of ILA Mumbai, to take it up. Over to you, Sambhav.
Sure. Thank you, Madhura. Yes, hi. So warm welcome to everyone for today's webinar. And it is my pleasure to give a brief introduction of the chief guest today and my other co-panelists. So let me start off with our chief guest for today's event, Honorable Mr. Justice V.C. Daga, former Judge, Bombay High Court. Justice Daga was enrolled as an advocate on 21st June 1972. He practiced before Nagpur bench of the Bombay High Court, as well as Supreme Court of India, and various high courts in civil, constitutional, labor, banking, service, and excise matters. He was a standing counsel for various banks, statutory, government, and semi-government organizations, and various leading industrial houses of the Vidarbha region. He was elected president of the High Court Bar Association, Nagpur, from 1996 to 1999, and was appointed as an additional judge of the Bombay High Court in the year 1999 and retired in the year 2011. We welcome you, sir, and looking forward to an intriguing session from you.
Thank you, Sambhu.
Right. I'll go on to sort of give a brief introduction of my fellow co-panelists. Let me start off with Mr. Aaron Solomon. Aaron is the managing partner of Solomon & Co., which ranks amongst the oldest and reputed Indian law firms and is a full-service 65 lawyer firm with offices in Mumbai and Pune. Aaron has assisted with several leading proceedings and transactions over his 25-year career and specializes in transactional work, including M&As, joint ventures, exchange control regulations, competition laws, banking, investment funds, private equity, capital markets, and securities law. Hi, and welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Sambhav.
We also have with us Mr. Farooq Kotwal, who is my other co-panelist. He's an advocate, honorary lecturer, motivational speaker, and an ex-judge. He's practicing as an advocate in civil, revenue, criminal courts since 1996. He worked as a civil judge, junior division, and judicial magistrate first class at the Kolhapur district from 2006 to 2007. He has delivered more than 100 lectures at legal workshops, legal aid camps, legal clinics, and social awareness programs. Welcome, Farooq. My other co-panelist is Ms. Pooja Terwad. She's a startup lawyer, business strategist, and a fundraising advisor. She's the founder of Pooja Terwad and Associates and has worked with over 500 startups in all spheres. She and her firm provide assistance in startup law, taxation and accounting services, shared CFO, India and Singapore business advisory, fund advisory and fund structuring, fundraising and venture capital negotiation. Pooja has been an advisor to incubations and accelerators globally. Hi and welcome, Pooja.
Thank you, Sambhav.
We have with us Mr. CJ Jovson. He's practicing on the original civil, criminal, and commercial jurisdictions of the Bombay High Court and the court subordinate to it since 2006, and has appeared before the Supreme Court of India and several other high courts in India. He's also presiding as an arbitrator and has passed several awards. He served as ex-joint secretary of the National Lawyers Campaign for Judicial Transparency and Reforms. Welcome, CJ.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thakur.
We have the moderator for the event today, who is Mr. Navneet Chugh. Welcome, Navneet. He is the managing partner of Chugh LLP, which was founded 35 years ago. The full-service legal and CA firm has a staff of 600 employees with 184 attorneys and CPAs in 15 offices in India and US. He is the founder of several Indian lawyers organizations in US and Canada, and also the Indian Lawyers Association. He is an attorney and a CPA and holds MBA from USC and is a graduate of Executive Leadership Program from Harvard University. Navneet, I know it is evening for you, so good evening to you.
Thank you so much, Sambhav. Doing a great job with the ILA in Mumbai. We're very happy that Indian Lawyers Association is progressing at such a rapid pace. We have a list of 400 cities in India with a population of over 1 lakh. And our goal for the next 3 years is that we want a ILA chapter in every one of these 400 cities. This way, we will become the world's largest legal organization. China doesn't allow organizations to start and flourish that easily. And given that we have more lawyers than any other country in the planet, we shall become the largest organization. And of course, Mumbai will always play a very important role. Thank you all for joining. One of the things that we need to discuss in India with our legal system is the 30 million pending cases, which I think affects every human being, affects their lives, affects their earning capacity. And so we're very honored to have Honorable Justice Daga with us today. So I'd like to start with him. I'll just ask all of you some questions, and feel free to jump in and interfere a bit. Everybody gets one free pass of interfering, so we can behave like civil lawyers. So Justice Daga, what would you say are the 2 or 3 most important reasons due to which our country has such a huge backlog?
Yes, at the outset, I thank the organization, Indian Lawyers Association, for making me a part of this program. Now, basically, why this much litigation and why these many cases pending? That is a question generally asked by everybody. To my mind, the first reason is, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So to my mind, the first reason is the attitude of the government and government officials. Now, after this 4G and coal block allotment cases, in the Mantralaya or in the government officials, the attitude is developed not to take decision. He is afraid of taking decision. Therefore, legitimately, even if I have to recover 100 rupees from the government, no officer is willing to pay me, and they will drive me to the court and they will ask me to get the order from the court. This is one of the factors which is adding to the litigation. Now, I know a case wherein one corporation was involved in a dispute with a private builder. The dispute was about the reimbursement of octroi. During the course of arbitration, the corporation, the contractor's lawyer said that let the corporation appoint their own chartered accountant, let him work out the tax liability. and we will accept that his report as it is, and will forgo our rest of the claim. We will our claim. Ultimately, the corporation appointed their chartered accountant. He reported a particular quantum of liability, and the contractor said that this figure is acceptable to me, let there be a payment. Ultimately, corporation did not accept that proposal, saying that no officer is willing to put his signature on the compromise settlement deed. Ultimately, that compromise did not take place, and the arbitrator was required to proceed with the arbitration. Arbitrator took another 1.5 years to decide, and he awarded 15 lakhs more than what was determined by the chartered accountant of that corporation.
Right.
Attitude on the part of the government officials, corporate.
Right. Okay, I'll come back to you and ask you for some solutions. So I'll ask my next question to Sambhav. So Sambhav, about 50% of the civil cases involve a land dispute, and the average time to resolve these matters is about 20 years. And we all know that a home, a house is the most important thing to anybody in their life. And if they're using the land for work purposes, then having the land be free and clear is very important for them to prosper in their business. So what can be done to resolve these land disputes in an expedient manner? Because we all know that a tainted land with liens and problems restricts business growth in the country.
Sure, Navneet. No, good question, and you have hit the nail there. So absolutely, I think so. A big chunk of cases, as you have pointed out, are with respect to some land disputes, and land is sort of an integral part of that litigation, across the courts, and not only just the High Court or the Supreme Court. It is across even the lower courts, right? And you rightly said. I think so. We need to, of course, acknowledge that land has always traditionally and even to date, right? It forms the biggest form of asset for almost everybody, not only just from mind, even from heart, right? So as a consequence, it's true that a lot of land disputes have clogged the courts all across India. To really get a solution here, I mean, I can pick a few sort of thoughts, and I can sort of give you 5 to 6 suggestions, which certainly are thought-provoking in my view, and where we can sort of look for solutions really which will help reduce the pendency to a large extent. So first, if I may pick up first of those 5 or 6 thoughts which I have. Look, first thing first is, we have to understand that, in India, there are 3 pillars, right? We have the legislature, we have the administrative, and we have the judicial, right? Now, all these pillars are coexisting and in fact, interconnected as well as reliant on each other. The first one, which is the legislative, I think so we need to, the problem which we face is there are host amount of laws and legislations and regulations which are conflicting also to a large extent, right? Now, as far as the land as a focus is concerned, it also falls under the state list as well as the concurrent list under the Constitution of India. So as a what happens as a consequence is there are a number of laws at the state levels which state governments form. There are a number of laws which are at the center level, as part of applying to every part of India, and there are conflicts between the two, which leads to a lot of questions in law as well as practice. So that is where I feel a major amount of cases which are actually out there and which are, being argued in the courts and perhaps pending for years and years is due to this question of conflict of laws. And just to give a corollary, we had the budget just, earlier this week, and the finance minister picked up one very important aspect. So she has suggested now that there are different laws pertaining to securities, right? And which are all critical and important laws. And she has very clearly said that now what she wants to sort of do is combine all of them together into one single securities code. And I think so that's absolutely the thought which should be there. If there are laws which are conflicting with each other, leading to a lot of disputes, I think so that's where we need to get solutions. So that's one. Second is, I think so we need to really, on land disputes, we need to sort of create a central database of laws, as well as not only just the laws, but even for that matter, even the whatever are the land records, right? Today, there is no central database. There is no record where somebody can go and figure out and find out what are, land and what are the details around it, what are the owner and sort of antecedent owners and all. So that's a second solution which will really bring down, to my mind, a lot of issues which are there about the details pertaining to any land parcels and all. Number three, I think so, in my view, one out of the box sort of a solution, and in fact it's not that an out of box, it was actually tried also. I think so, when like we have different tribunals for different areas of practice, right? Why not have a land tribunal? I think so these civil disputes which are there, which are all revolving around land litigations, and as you rightly said, the majority amount of litigations, in fact even Supreme Court as we speak, 25% of the litigations are actually regarding land acquisition or land related disputes, right? So at lower levels, if we can create land tribunals which can fast track these litigations, I think so that can be one, perhaps a very good solution. Amongst others, I think so there's also that we should look at filling the number of judges, I think so, which is way short from what the need of judge to people ratio is concerned. So right. I believe these are the 4 or 5 solutions which, if are implemented, to my mind, can really drastically reduce the litigations on the land related aspects.
Thank you, Sambhav. Great ideas. So Aaron, I have a question for you. So Bar Council of India says there's 1.3 million lawyers in India, but 600,000 of them, which is 45% of them, have a fake law degree. Do you think this is one of the reasons for the backlog, that half of the lawyers in the country are not educated and are not professional lawyers? And what can the courts, the Bar Council, the legal organizations, the legislature do about this?
So thanks, Navneet. So I think lawyers and unskilled and unprofessional lawyers certainly have a large part to blame in causing the judicial backlog. The judicial backlog, which I think the note prepared by ILA talks about 30 million pending cases in the country. And I think, that does not speak about the hurdles caused on potential litigants approaching the court. And while we try to address the judicial backlog, we should certainly keep in mind that we need to ensure it's a high quality judicial system, which is very approachable to the common man. And we should not create barriers in that respect. Validating the qualification of lawyers, to my mind, should be a simple process of implementation, because all law degrees are issued by an Indian university. So it's simply a matter of validating the qualifications of lawyers, and I think certain steps in that regard is being taken by the Indian judiciary and the Indian system. Continuing legal education like they have in other parts of the world, to my mind, is very important in addressing the judicial backlog as well. For example, and this is implemented by the bar councils, not necessarily by the judiciary or even by the government. For example, the Bar Council of New York, I read up, provides that every new trainee for the first 2 years of their career need to do 16 hours of continuing legal education every year. And after 2 years of qualification, they need to do around 12 hours of continuing legal education in every year, of which at least 1/3 needs to go towards legal ethics on being a better lawyer and helping the court address the backlog. So continuing legal education is also a very important step to ensure lawyers not only do their job and effectively represent clients, but also help the courts reach a speedy and quality outcome in an efficient manner. Also, another possible solution to deal with the judicial backlog, in my experience, is imposition of legal costs. Legal costs need not be of a very high amount. It may be a simple 10 or 20,000 rupees, but lawyers who are being imposed a legal cost due to a frivolous filing or a delayed filing or an unnecessary adjournment, it's a loss of face and reputation for that lawyer. And the last thing you want to do is go back to the client and ask him in the middle of a heated legal battle to pay even a small amount of legal costs to the other side. It really causes a lot of discomfort, invites sanction from the client, and it could be a very effective measure to deal with unnecessary adjournments and frivolous filings.
Thank you, Aaron. I believe our country hasn't had a full-time law minister for several years now. I certainly hope you can become the law minister and fix these things. Great ideas.
Yeah, we had some great law ministers who became finance ministers.
Right. Right. But for some reason, we can't find a law minister in the country now for several years.
Yeah.
So CJ, let's talk about the 30 million pending cases. 25% of them are criminal cases. And what's very surprising about our country is that we don't believe in plea bargaining. 66 of the 190 countries in the planet have a robust plea bargaining system. Some countries, over 95% of the criminal matters settle outside the court in the hallway between the prosecutor and the defense counsel through plea deals. And they walk in and announce to the judge, Your Honor, it's like a meat market in some criminal courts. Your Honor, we have a deal. And the judge says, okay, what is the deal? Well, he stole a loaf of bread and we lowered the count from grand theft to theft or some infraction. And the judge says, okay, I stamp it. Go ahead, serve 10 days and pay $100 or 100 rupees or whatever. So in India, plea bargaining resolves less than 1% of the cases, where we know in some countries it's over 90%. So why do you think that is? What needs to happen that we get to a point where at least half of the criminal cases, which is 12.5% of the 30 million cases, can get resolved by plea bargaining? Just make a deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chok. Before I answer your specific question, I would like to briefly speak something about the general atmosphere. In my observation, there are three reasons for backlog of so many pending cases, whether it is civil or criminal. And I have a solution also. First, let's see the problem. Very briefly, I will explain, and I will come back to the question which you posed to me. The basic reasons, three reasons. One is lack of education. Education includes the lack of knowledge about the importance of the judicial mechanism. This ignorance is there amongst a large number of lawyers as well as litigants. That's one reason. Another is the lack of infrastructure. When you go to the magistrate courts, you will see many vacant courtrooms. When you go to the consumer courts, in many of the consumer courts, the main member, that's the judicial member, is not available. Only the technical members are available. That is a condition with even the high courts. How many high courts have full what you call full seats full, and Supreme Court also. That is the second problem. And third one is lawyers not realizing their role as officers of the court. This has two ramifications. One is they fail to discharge their responsibilities which they have as the third component of the justice delivery system. When you say bar and bench, they are the wheels of the same chariot, the chariot of justice. Third component is the litigant, in my understanding or interpretation. Here what happens is, if somebody has a very bad case on merits, what you do is the best advisable is just drag the matter, file it, drag the matter, get a status quo order and try all the tricks in the books to stall the matter from proceeding any further. Now, solution, first and second problems. First problem is lack of education. Many lawyers do not know what is plea bargaining. Many lawyers do not know the kind of tribunals which we have in India. Just like, for instance, Mr. Sambhav said that we need land tribunals. Land tribunals are there for the last 50 years in India. But the accessibility of the people, accessibility of the lawyers. How many know it? Nobody, very few. Now, that part can be addressed by appropriate education at all levels. Even the members of the judiciary needs what you say, occasional reorientation programs. They need to be sensitized about the various problems which we are facing in the country. They are sitting on chairs which are independent from all corners. They need to be sensitized at every 6 months about what we are facing, apart from the newspaper source. Second second problem is regarding the infrastructure. That is what something the government has to address. But demand should go from the bar. Bar should be aware what the litigant wants. An average litigant in this country is illiterate.
CJ, when you say the government should do it, do you mean the union government or the state government?
The constitution is very clear on the responsibilities of both the governments. Lower court, when it comes to state government. The high court, central government.
Given that we're the 6th, 7th largest land country in the planet and soon to be the largest, most populous country in the planet, don't you think one of the, let's say you live in a big house, 20-room house, and you want to clean it, you start with cleaning one room at a time, right? So don't you think that one of the solutions is for the state governments to tell the districts and the district to tell the cities, hey, clean up your house? Why is it that New Delhi has to worry about all of the courtrooms of India?
I'm not telling, I said
decentralize.
No. I said there is a constitution divides the roles very clearly. State government has a definite role. All the district courts, the state government's role. If you go to a court like Ulhasnagar in Thana district or any court, which is outside the Mumbai area, there on at least once in a week there is no power. But you see their bar rooms are well lit with inverters and UPS, but the courtrooms are not having any battery backup. That is infrastructure problem. And who is responsible? The bar is responsible. So many bar associations. How many bar associations have written to the government asking for clean and well-lit courtrooms, infrastructure? How many? Nobody cares.
Right. Okay, and I'll come back to you, CJ. Good suggestions. So let me ask Pooja. Pooja, you work with a lot of startups and startups.
Mr. Navneet, recently,
yes.
There was one
Mr. Navneet.
Yes, Justice Daga, go ahead.
Recently there is today there is a news item in the news that the central government is going to appoint private experts to take decisions in the Mantralaya, and they will be holding the post of a joint secretary. So once the attitude of the government official not to take decision can also be taken care if outsider experts are appointed, and that is a good move on the part of the government.
Right, that's wonderful.
They will be able to take fast decisions.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Pooja, one of the things about startups is that the startups look for white space. Startups look for problems in the world because you solve problems and you set up a business, you make a lot of money. So now look at 30 million pending cases. And by the way, you know, when we started the ILA website 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we wrote this article that, hey, there's 30 million pending cases. ILA hereby declares a judicial emergency. And actually in 3 years, the number has gone from 30 million to 38 million. We just haven't updated it. We've been advertising the last few days about the seminar, and actually the number is huge. So when there is a huge problem like this, a case, the oldest case in the country is from 1878, 142 years old case in Varanasi. Land disputes are not being resolved in 20 years. Criminals are spending more times behind bars waiting for their trial than if they're just pled guilty on day one, they would have been out by now. So given the extent of the problem in India, with all these 38 million pending cases, seems to me that some startup would smell blood and smell money and say, hey, let me solve this problem by technology. How come no startup in India is doing anything to solve this problem?
Thank you, Navneet, for the question. So I absolutely agree that startups mean technology. So whenever in most of the startups, they love working with technology, and that's how, that's where the money comes from. But when you talk, in fact, when the lockdown was declared, I had more than 4 entrepreneurs coming to me and saying, "Arey, the courts are working through Zoom. Can we do something to have a better platform?" Because initially, if you remember, there was a lot of chaos and confusion when the appearances and everything started to happen digitally in the beginning, March, April time when the lockdown was declared. So we had a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs wanting to do something in this space. However, like everybody else in the panel have pointed out, that this is not a decision to be made by one party. It requires collaboration of multiple stakeholders. Like Justice Daga pointed out, certainly the government, and then there are law officers like CJ pointed out, and then the bar is responsible. So there's so many stakeholders here who have to take a collective decision, and I think that's where we fall short. I don't think we have dearth of techies or people who do not understand technology. I think if given a chance, startups and entrepreneurs can actually really make an impact in this space. Coming back to what can we do, I think like Justice Daga just pointed out, privatization, I think that's an out of the box move. I don't think we could have thought of this 20 years ago. I think this was a government monopolized sector hai. So I think privatization is a very, very good move. So because the problem is unique, we need a out of the box solution. That's what I believe. And I think AI, machine learning, and things like that can have a very strong impact. In fact, courts have also started to use digital technology to certain extent. We have started using video conferencing. Our records and daily updates are being uploaded on the website. I think we can go one step ahead. We can start using artificial intelligence. In fact, judiciary in some parts of the developed countries like USA, Canada has already deployed AI systems to certain extent, basically to assist judges on taking call on certain matters, like say for granting bail or releasing offenders on parole and things like that. I think in India too, these tasks can be identified. We can speeden up the entire process using intelligent machines. I think these tasks can range from routine matters such as services of processes, and also to complex ones like evaluation of evidences. I think something like this will not only save judicial time of the courts, leading to better utilization of public money, but it will also help in reducing the impact of very natural biases that judges may have in decision making. So I think trained machine, but having said this, trained machines, howsoever intelligent, there's always been an argument, howsoever intelligent, cannot replace human judges. However, I think these machines can definitely help the judges in making the decision process faster, more calculated, unbiased, and also ensuring that in this process of handling large number of cases, justice does not become a casualty. I think that's my take. And I've also come across a lot of startups in Singapore, Korea, China, actually using AI based functions in the court, which is actually helping them reduce time. Also, as an inspiration to certain extent, our own very own Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas also uses AI-based functions to assess contracts or due diligence processes in required for M&A. So I think we've begin in that process, but we'll require a lot of support from other stakeholders also to actually completely have AI and these machines in place. This is what I feel, Navneet.
Thank you so much. Yesterday, a lawyer by the name of Vishwam Jindal sent me a long email, and it was just beautiful reading his email. He's got so many suggestions on how to use technology, and he's an engineer who became a lawyer. And I asked him to join, and raise his hand, so we'd love to hear from him if he's on the call. In the meanwhile, let me go to you, Farooq. So Farooq, for instance, let's look at some other countries around the planet. So in USA, for instance, 90% of cases are tried and finished within 2 years by law. In England, it's 1 year, half of USA. In China, it's 6 months, half of England and a quarter of USA. And Netherlands, when you file a trial, when you file a complaint, the court gives you a trial date 87 days after you file the lawsuit, the trial is set. What do we have to do in India that at least half or 60 or 70%, some number, can be adjudicated within 5 years?
First of all, according to my mind, there should be appointment of the judges. If you take the US figures, the ratio of judge and in India, almost 40%.
This is Daga. Sorry, there seems to be some network issue at your end.
Total.
Your voice was cracking. Could you repeat now?
You see, so far as the High Court judges are concerned, there is a 40% vacancy. Now, total High Court judges, full strength of the High Court judges is 1080. Now you divide our population with 1080, judge and population ratio would be for 1 crore, for more than 1 crore people, only one High Court judge. How do you expect the cases to get disposed of? So unless the backlog is filled in, there is no other solution, and then the judge and population ratio is required to be increased. The more judges are required to be appointed, more infrastructure is required to be provided. Then only our pendency will come down.
Good, true, Farooq. So let's go to Justice Daga again. So Justice Daga, we have a huge problem. We have a 38 million backlog. We need to cut it. We all know that it's not good for the country. So let me give you a magic wand that has 3 wishes in it. What 3 things would you do to reduce the backlog of India's pending cases in a drastic fashion?
Okay, there's some network error again, I believe it is in.
Okay, so while we wait for Justice Daga to come back, Sambhav, let me ask you. So in the ranking, there's a very famous ranking by WJP. India is ranked number 66 in the rule of law. We are also ranked,
Yes.
India is ranked number 77 in the ease of doing business, 124th out of 190 countries in the planet in per capita income, and number 140 in happiness, according to the World Happiness Report. Seems to me it's simple and straightforward that if we improve our judicial system, then ease of doing business, per capita income, and happiness would get better for everyone. Do you agree or no?
Yes, I agree, but for that you have to take positive steps.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may. No, sure. So Navneet, that was directed to me, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Justice Daga is back. So Justice Daga, let me ask you, I give you
sure.
3, a magic wand with 3 wishes. What would you do to cut down the pendency in a drastic fashion?
You see, first I will make the
So Justice Daga, we are losing you.
Provide the provide the infrastructure for judiciary. Yes.
Right.
Are you able to hear me or not?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. Secondly, I will ask the central and state government to immediately fill in the vacancies of in the tribunal and in the High Court and Supreme Court. Thirdly, I will ask not to appoint retired judges on the tribunals. Let there be a fresh blood appointed, because retired judges, if appointed, they are not interested in working in the tribunal. They are only interested in perks. Fourthly, I will advise the promotion of ADR system. Let the majority of the dispute be referred to the arbitration, mediation, or conciliation. Most of the problems would be solved.
So Justice Daga, former Chief Justice of India, T.S. Thakur, stated that India needs 70,000 judges and we only have 20,000. We are 50,000 short.
5.10 lakh cases per court.
Yeah. So why can't we fill these vacancies?
Hello? Yes, that is the difficulty with the central government, state government, and the judiciary.
Right. Okay. I guess a lot of work needs to be done. So Sambhav, we rank number 66 in the rule
suitability
of law.
Of a candidate.
Yeah. Okay.
Recommendations are pending with central government for more than 1 year. Why should it take such a long time?
Why
and
do you think
there are more rejection than the recommendations. The problem is that every government, when the political party is in opposition, they want independent judiciary, but when they are in power, they want committed judiciary.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. So Sambhav, India is 66 in rule of law, 124 in per capita income, and 140 in happiness. Is there a connection?
Yes, no, sure. So Navneet, I totally agree with you. I think so. If there is some kind of improvement, as Justice Daga also mentioned, if we can bring some improvements in the thought processes, as well as more importantly the judicial system to some extent, I'm certainly we can improve the rankings that you are mentioning. And of course, it is better said than done. But I totally agree with what you're saying. See, according to me, there are few things that we are lacking, which certainly need to be sort of addressed. So one is, especially at the lower level of courts, I think there is a huge lack of sort of technical and infra support, which was, also conveyed by my other panelists. So that is something which also importantly, there is lack of funds as well, right? I think so that's something that needs to be addressed. Number two, I mean, see, honestly, this whole pandemic, which we have all sort of, spent most of the time at our homes, really has taught a lot of us, right? A lot of things, more than one, right? Now we know the importance of technology. And I think so that's something which we should really think and tap upon to really bring faster and efficient mechanisms into practice. Number third, and this is something which Justice Daga also mentioned, I think so there is a real need of better coordination between government departments and for better administration, and importantly even between ministries, right? When the laws are being set down or legislations are being put in place, there is real need of better coordination, which is unfortunately not there to that extent, which can really streamline and smoothen a lot of processes. And to my mind, again, from judicial point of view, I think so there should be a total zero tolerance as far as corruption, right? If we are able to address a lot of these concerns, I'm sure in the happiness rankings and other, doing business and all, I think so they certainly we can see an uptick. And from a foreign investor point of view also, I mean, if we are, of course, the Prime Minister and everybody has been focusing on raising more foreign capital and getting more investments into India. I think so that can only happen once there is a full certainty on the rule of law, and there is an efficient enforcement mechanism for the protection of rights and interests. Once these two pillars are taken care of, to my mind, we can see real progress and jump in the numbers. And I'm sure, as relatively as you mentioned, Navneet, in the jump in the happiness sort of component as well. So I believe these are some of the points which I feel if they are addressed, we can see things going north.
Right. Thank you so much, Sambhav. So Aaron, let's talk about mediation, arbitration, ADR, alternate dispute resolution. One of our attendees, BP Badi, has said that we need to do more ADR. Justice Daga said we need to do more ADR. I think everybody in the entire country knows we need to do more ADR, but we are unable to make a dent in these pending cases. And what's kind of sad is that every day 5 new cases get filed in India and 3 get resolved. So we're not winning this battle. Somebody wrote a story somewhere in Indian media that it will take 466 years to clear the backlog. So why can't we use ADR in a more effective manner, Aaron?
So I absolutely agree with the statement. I've seen some of the comments on ADR on the chat as well. And I believe through ADR, we can quickly address and resolve at least 50% of the judicial backlog. Arbitration law has been existing for a while now, but mediation in India has not really taken off. To my mind, the reason for that is because in India, what we have is optional pre-litigation mediation. I've done at least 3 cases outside India, 3 mediations outside India in the last couple of years, where I've been absolutely surprised to walk away with a mediated settlement when I was not expecting any. I walked into these mediations in different parts of the world with 0 possibility of a settlement, and we walked away with a settlement agreement. And the reason for that is outside India, the mediation is pre-trial, not pre-litigation. That means after you finish the interim stage, after you're in a proceeding for maybe a year or so, that's when the case is sent to mediation. And maybe a year down the line, the heat of battle has cooled. Both the parties are possibly incurred legal costs. They have gone through the interim stage. They're a bit more realistic in terms of the outcome of the proceeding. And maybe either or both of the parties are happy for a face-saving walk away from the legal proceeding as well. So I've seen pre-trial mediation being very effective. I've also seen statutes in, for example, the courts of Florida, where mediation is given a certain sanctity and an effect. So while mediation, of course, as you know, is not binding and not compulsory on either of the parties, neither of the parties need to accept the recommendations of a mediator, and they can walk away at any point of time. But in the courts of Florida, I don't know, possibly Navneet has seen this, both parties have got to put in a settlement proposal as part of the mediation proceedings. Now, if the plaintiff puts in a settlement proposal and then finally loses the proceedings, or does not get anything, maybe get 75% of what his settlement proposal was, he mandatorily requires to pay all the legal costs of the defendant. If the defendant puts in a settlement proposal in the mediation proceeding, and the plaintiff wins, or the defendant does not get, 75 or gets more than 25% of what the defendant's proposal was, the defendant mandatorily and under statute needs to pay all the legal costs of the plaintiff. So through this, mediation and settlement offers is given a certain sanctity and effect, and could prove very effective. And to my mind, deal with a very large part of the judicial backlog.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Those are wonderful suggestions. So let me go to CJ again. So CJ, there are night courts in Pakistan, night courts in Singapore, night courts in New York. There are mobile courts in Pakistan and Bangladesh. India started a mobile court in Haryana in 2007 and stopped it a year later. Do you think night courts, weekend courts, mobile courts can be used to cut into the backlog?
We had night courts in India some 2 years back. And in the year 2018 and 19, Justice Kathawala created a sensation by sitting in the court up to 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. in the night. And such initiatives have been done by a few judges on experimental and dedication basis. And they are working very well, and they do work, and they have a tremendous level of success. And they definitely, it's a workable solution in India.
Okay.
We have night courts in certain parts of India, and in Mumbai also.
Okay, wonderful. So Pooja, from year 1 to year 1750, India was the richest country in the planet. After that, from 1750 to 1991, I guess we went from 25% of the world's share of wealth to 2.5%. Prior to that, a bunch of lawyers got together in 1880s and worked on getting India independence. So we got political freedom in 1947. 92, we liberalized the country and became economically more free. So now you're the youngest one on the panel. So we've done whatever we've done. We got our country, political freedom, economic freedom. But now we're going to leave your generation with 38 million pending cases. Do you youngsters have a plan on what you're going to do with these 38 million pending cases?
Navneet, thank you again for the question. So that suddenly sounded like such a huge responsibility. Okay, so Navneet, I think youngsters, in fact, including me, at some point of time in my career, I wanted to be in the judicial services. However, being a first generation lawyer, there were so many other discouraging, demoralizing events. You needed to have a certain minimum requirement of practice. And then when I graduated, I think the All India bar exam was had just started. And when we gave the exam, there was so much hue and cry about the exam. Apparently the idea was to have lawyers inducted into the system with a certain a certain level of intelligence, both emotional and intellectual. However, I feel the exam that we had ultimately, and we still continue to have, if I am allowed to be upfront and here brutally honest, I think it is a joke. The exam is it doesn't do any good to the system. So I think the first thing that we need to do is there are a lot of other youngsters, I'm sure, just like me, immediately after the law school, they would want to join the legal services. So I think the first, the judicial services, but I think the first deterrent is the pay scale. The wages are really less. So just how the brain drain happened, similarly, the youngsters are more attracted to the corporate services and see a lot of brighter minds going and joining the corporate services. So I think the first thing that we need to do is introducing a wage which actually justifies the efforts that a youngster is going to put in. So that's, I think, is going to be the first step. Second is everybody's talking about disposal, vacancy, things like that. I think in at least the contracts that we do, the only clause that we refer to in dispute resolution is the arbitration clause. So agar we have to settle the dispute, we have to settle it through arbitration. So that's one thing that we started to do, having an arbitration clause mandatorily, and trying not only having the clause, but trying to settle the dispute only through arbitration. Because when you're working with smaller entities who cannot afford, litigation is not just time consuming, it's got extremely unaffordable these days. So yes, so arbitration, yes, can help. And I think it can start with a lot of commercial contracts only relying on arbitration. And one additional thing that I think we need to do is I think one of the reasons for non-filling of judicial posts is non-availability of efficient judges. I think a better way of finding qualified judges is to have maybe a national judicial talent pool by conducting sensible competitive exams, and which, when I say competitive, they really need to be competitive, not like the bar entrance exam. We could have national eligibility tests. We could have we can have youngsters actually enrolled into the system. We can have them as ad hoc judges, at least for the very initial level of cases, where we can pay them an honorarium for every case appearance. The person did not be there for the entire case, but at least the youngsters who are already inducted into the system can be there for the initial stages, and I think that will make a lot of impact. Also, I am remembered of one report in 1970, which was filed by Justice K.N. Vanchu, who was also retired CJ of Supreme Court, and a report on the direct taxes inquiry committee, and he had suggested that if we have to reduce the backlog, we have to utilize our retired judges and their talent and their acumen, and that's how he suggested how Article 224A needs to be used to resolve the backlogs. I think, having said this, if we actually use the talent pool, the youngsters, the youth in the right manner by having a talent pool in the country, I think we can also save a lot on the infrastructure, like how CJ mentioned the situation of Ulhasnagar and all other small courts. Actually, that's the fact. You do not have lights. We see judges sitting without a fan in 35-degree temperature. That's gruesome, and no youth, no youngster wants to join a situation like that. I think it's extremely discouraging. We need to make this profession, just like how corporate law is, it's something, it's more desirable. I think this field needs to get a little bit more desirable and more appealing for the youth. I think that is when we can attract youngsters towards judicial system.
Mr. Navneet, so far as the availability of talent is concerned, I know for the High Court judges, the talent is available, provided you give a right offer to a right person at his right age.
Have we lost Navneet? There's some network error.
Okay. Thank you. So Farooq, I think I cut you off before the first question, so I'll ask you a second one and you can answer the second one and also take time to answer the first one. The first one I asked you about how can we have 90% of the cases in India get adjudicated within 5 years. And my second question to you is, there are 60,000 pending cases before the Supreme Court of India. With holidays, etc., the Supreme Court works exactly one half of the year and is off about 183 days. And given that India has a federal and state system and the constitution, like CJ reminds us, the duty of law is on both federal and state, why can't the 29 states of India have their own state Supreme Court to reduce the huge burden on one court in New Delhi?
Yes, good morning, everybody. There are some suggestions as far as the main topic is concerned. I will go directly to the root of this particular session. To reduce the pendency before the Honorable High Court, Supreme Court, and in all cases, since I am practicing before District Court and a trial court, I would like to suggest few suggestions as far as pendency is concerned. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, okay. The few suggestions are: the advocates and judges should utilize maximum court hours to conduct the matters. Second, the judges, advocates, and litigants should avoid unnecessary adjournments. Third, the matters like application for maintenance, custody of child, and domestic violence shall be finished in time and on priority basis. It is the duty of the government to provide the good infrastructure for all the courts, as rightly stated by some of the panelists. It is the high time to increase the number of judges and fill up the vacancies in the high courts and the Supreme Courts. There should be amendments in the Civil Procedure Code in the execution matters. So, Honorable Justice Daga Sahib is there. I suggest few amendments in order for 21 of Civil Procedure Code. Now, what happens in the partition suit? If anybody files a suit for partition, and under Section 54 of Civil Procedure Code, the matter goes to the collector for the partition and for the partition to district court. Now, the district court generally, what happens? The district court sends the present to the Tahsildar. Tahsildar passes an order of a partition, and under Maharashtra Land Revenue Code 1966, aggrieved party can file an appeal against that particular order, against the order of the Tahsildar, before subdivisional officer, that is a deputy collector. And under section 247 of MLRC, second appeal will lie before the collector. So this is, how can you say, means once the decree is sent to the collector, that means we have to presume that the order passed by the Tahsildar is been passed by the collector itself. So Again, under section 257 of MLRC, the code provides a revision. Again, there
Okay.
I think so. We lost the connection there. Yeah.
So Sambhav, can you please take over and handle the question and answer session?
Yeah, sure. So anybody who has a question, of course, they can raise their hand. But so from I see, Justice Daga, there is a question which is directed at you.
Yes.
I'll just read it out. It is from Mr. Pradeep Kapadia. It says, how much delay takes due to procedural aspect? Highest number of case law is on CPC and CRPC as also Evidence Act. In Arbitration Act, we have indirectly recognized these procedural laws as culprits. We need procedures, but not super technicalities. You have any comment or thought on that?
As far as the procedural law is concerned, if you follow the code, the provisions of the Civil Procedure Code, the delay in procedure can always be cut down. Now, today, what is happening? Lawyers are not using discoveries, provisions for discovery. They are not serving interrogatories, and all these questions are put in the cross-examination. And against every question, the witness is asked to produce the document. Therefore, the Civil Procedure Code is one of the best code which can control the procedural delay. But we are using those provisions just to delay the proceedings.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Kapadia, I can see you on the screen. Do you want to add anything onto your question, or does that help?
I had a suggestion. I had an answer to that question.
With that, the highest number of cases, what Justice Daga says is right, that some of the laws don't use it properly. But there are other provisions in the CPC, and on this technicality, if you say highest number of cases, we keep on fighting on procedure. And if too much of technicalities are there from the judicial side also, then I think it delays. We had Justice Pence, and of course Justice Daga also, and they've never stood on this such technicalities, and the disposal of cases was so fast. So there are judges who don't stand on technicalities, and ultimately you have to see, has it really caused prejudice to the party?
No, normally approach should be the substantial compliance is there or not.
Sure.
Right. The question was regarding the compulsory mediation for the governments, because they are the culprits, the biggest litigation, as Justice Lagar's opening remark only said, that they are the biggest litigants and the delay. And that is circle, because more the delay, the more they will not cooperate with the citizen and do injustice. So this vicious circle has to be broken somewhere.
Well, you see, even if the government official, even if they will appoint their own arbitrator, and after getting award against them, they will not accept it. That is the attitude of the government.
But sir, here Niti Aayog has done a nice thing for infrastructure projects, that once the arbitration award is given, 75% you can withdraw, the party can withdraw against bank guarantee, and then let the government litigate in the High Court if they want. So this what has come from Niti Aayog formula has really worked in the infrastructure sector.
Let us see if it is implemented well.
Sure. So just moving on to the next question, I can see Dhruti Kapadia. Can you unmute yourself and raise your question?
Hi, good afternoon, one and all. It's a wonderful session and very thrilling question I want to ask Justice Daga particularly. So being a judge, don't you think we should also evaluate the performance of the judge before evaluating them? Because we've been reading a couple of news that how the judgments are coming out these days. So should we have a quarterly review reports, or how does the judiciary, really function on performing of the judge's performance should be rated out? before you evaluate, like, you take them on the bench, or before you take them above from the position that they are already holding today?
You see, certainly I am of this concern. You see, when you are taking a person from subordinate judiciary to a high court, you have a track record of that person of having worked as a trial court judge for 10 to 15 years. So why can't you look into his track record before appointing him merely by going seniority? Don't appoint person by seniority. See the talent of that person and you appoint him. Now today we have landed in such a situation that we appoint the judges from subordinate judiciary, and thereafter we say that no, this stuff is not a good stuff for High Court. So that is, and secondly, even after appointment of a judges, why should there not be a review of their work?
Yes,
because
that's what
most of the judges coming from subordinate judiciary, once they reach to the High Court, they are reluctant to work in the High Court. They feel that once they have become a High Court judge, they have achieved everything. I had a judge with me in a division bench who was reluctant to give judgment. When I used to ask him to write judgment, he said, no, Baba, you write that judgment. Next day, I was required to tell him that you are at the verge of appointment. You are to be appointed by a chief, you are to be recommended by Chief Justice for some tribunal. Please work so that he can recommend you. And from next day, he started working and dictating judgment. So this is the situation. Therefore, you must have a working judges, whichever may be the court.
No, I meant about quality, sir. Reviewing the quality of the judgments sometimes, I only meant on that platter. And also in addition to it, there should be no litigation policy for few matters in government sectors. What's your take on that? That's my last question to you, sir. And then
yes, few cases are, some cases are there where there should not be a litigation at the instance of government. Why should there be a litigation for mutation? If there is a death of a father and son is applying for mutation to mutate that property in his name, why should there not be a mutation in his name? Why should he be asked to go to the court and get order? And the officer who is driving him to the court should be charged for misconduct. But unfortunately, there is no system of taking any action against the officer, even if he takes a wrong decision. Or by the time you decide to take objection, he gets retired.
True, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks, Dhruti. And sort of in the interest of time, I think so we can take one last question. We have, I can see Mr. Raju Thakkar, you have a question. If you can unmute yourself and raise it.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to all the panelists and all present around. Sir, my contention as to the quality of the judges is that unless and until the system at the root level is changed, just 3 years of practice and you can be a JMFC. You get 60% or more in your exams, you can apply for a judge's seat. Does a person know what to do when he has not gone through a single trial? Is it possible for a person to give justice when he has not gone through a trial? The person doesn't know anything, but merely because 3 years have passed and he can apply for JMFC. Don't you think that at this root level itself, the changes need to be made? It's just my question. Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Daga, Justice Daga, if you want to respond on to that?
You see, if a person is appointed as a judicial magistrate, he is given training. He is made to work with another judge for 3 to 6 months. Another difficulty is that if you want a person who has practiced more than 7 or 8 years, he is reluctant to become a judicial magistrate. Because by that time he had already established his practice. Therefore, a talent, if you want to pick up a talent, you can pick up a talent of a person having 3 to 4 years of practice. Then we have got a judicial academy. There we are giving him training. we are making him to work with another judicial magistrate or another civil judge senior division for 3 to 6 months, wherein he can pick up the trial work. So it is not that without giving him training, he is made to function as a judicial magistrate or as a civil judge junior division. He is given sufficient training.
True, sir. And one more contention of mine was as rightly put by you, the delaying tactics used by the advocates. As one of my learned friends said, that there should be a review of the judges. Why not review even of the advocates? The moment it is found that integrity is not followed, why not take some action?
That is right.
In fact, more than the litigants, I feel that the cases are pending because of the lack of integrity on the part of advocates. And I can rightly say so as a practicing advocate.
No, but for the judiciary, it is not possible to cover this subject. It is for the bar members to decide.
Correct.
And secondly, such types of lawyers are deliberately engaged by some litigants to seek adjournments.
Correct.
Sorry. Yeah, sure. So thank you very much, everyone. Just one last question, and this is for you, Aaron. So I think so. Just on the last point which Justice Daga just pointed out, and the Raju also said about it. I think the question to you is, what do you think lawyers can do to assist the courts in reducing the backlog?
So I think certainly the emphasis on well-drafted pleadings has dropped over the years. Okay, and a lot of focus is on, of course, on the arguments. So in addition to the arguments, which are very important, moving back to quality drafted pleadings, written submissions, interrogatories, like I think Farooq mentioned, would certainly be helpful. Of course, where the judges could prepare better for a hearing even before we come to the time, when the matter is eventually heard. Because well-drafted pleadings would encourage a judge to take up the matter and hear it and finish it off and make it easier for the judge to get to a speedy disposal. So I certainly think that would be one. Sanction on adjournments, to my mind, if a party is seeking an adjournment, whether it's genuine or not, the party ought to be picking up the legal cost of the other side. So something on terms of adjournments could be done as well. One important thing to keep in mind is we do not have jury trials in India. For that reason, disposal of cases ought to be quicker in India compared to some other parts of the world. I think a well-trained professional lawyer can present a crystal clear argument before a judge in a matter of minutes. It doesn't need to take long at all, and we could certainly address a lot of the judicial backlog through that.
Great, thank you. And before Navneet, I hand over to you for the closing remarks. I think so, Farooq, we have you back. We lost you there, but if you sort of want to conclude your thought, what you were saying on, so then I think so we can close the session after that. Farooq, can you unmute yourself? Farooq, you need to unmute.
Okay, I'm totally agree with Mr. Aaron that advocates should be accompanied or equipped with the better drafting, better argument skills. He should be ready with the matter. He should be ready with the arguments, and he can spend more time in the library. So, as rightly said, we can argue the matter in a precise manner that will definitely help to the judges to come to the crux of the matter and decide the matter urgently, and the remaining matters, that is maintenance, custody, all these matters should be finished in quick sessions. The temporary injunction applications is to be decided within 30 days, and what are the mandatory provisions given under the civil procedure code has to be strictly followed, and that will definitely help to reduce the pending cases before the trial court and the district courts. That is my suggestion.
Sure. Justice Daga, just one last question, which I may have a quick one for you, is, I always used to think this, that, and this has been in talks for a while now, that, the retirement age for judges, of course, we are talking about filling the judges and the vacancies and all, but at the same time, the retirement age for judges, which we have in India, and I think so Navneet can talk about US and what's the position there. But I feel personally that, the 62 years for High Court and 65 for Supreme Court should certainly be raised. And I mean, looking at you, I mean, of course, you are active, of course, despite being, retired for a while. I mean, I personally feel that it should be raised to 65 for High Court and perhaps 68 to the Supreme Court.
Yes,
Do you have a thought on that?
It should be raised, because what happens by it, once you are appointed as a High Court judge, 7 to 8 years, you get a good amount of experience. By the time you get a experience, your retirement comes in. Therefore,
Right.
it is always advisable that it should be 65 and 70. You see, even after retirement, judges are working for more than 10 to 15 years as an arbitrator.
That's correct.
Now, I retired 10 years before, still I am working as an arbitrator. Why I could not have worked as a High Court judge for 70, up to 70 years or 65 years.
Precisely.
So, by the time you become mature, you get opportunity to dispose of more cases. By that time, you learn the technique of disposing of the cases. But what happens by the time you learn the technique of early disposal or disposal of cases, that time you are at the verge of retirement. So definitely this will help if the age of High Court judges and Supreme Court judges is increased.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Yeah, Navneet, over to you.
Thank you, Sambhav. I guess if we can have presidents of countries that are in their 78 and 79 and 80 be president of big countries, that I think judges can remain till they're 70, 75. That's a great thought. I think one of the mantras to believe in life is that there is no problem in this world. The only problem is not finding a solution. And I think India was the richest country on the planet for 1750 years. I think if we put our mind to it, we're talking about sending Indians to the moon now. And I think if we put our mind to it, we can take care of these 30 million pending cases. Delayed justice is no justice at all. And I think lawyers should put pressure on the courts, and the court should put pressure on the legislature. And youngsters like Pooja should be living their life in a revolution mode on a daily basis, Pooja. Don't put up with anything. This is a travesty on our country and we need to fix it. And sorry, we're leaving this mess to you, but if you don't do it, then your kids will have to take care of it. And by then it'll be 100 million pending cases. So let's fix this. I think it's important that we start talking about it at least openly. And that's one of the purposes of ILA. We're going to repeat this session with around the other cities in India. Thank you so much, CJ. Thank you so much, Justice Daga. Thank you, Sambhav. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Farooq. And thank you, Pooja, for being our panelists. And thanks to all of you for joining us on a Sunday morning. We figured between breakfast and lunch, we'll steal an hour from you. So thank you for joining us, but keep the fight going. Don't put up with anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Navneet. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. Again, on behalf of ILA and the Mumbai chapter, appreciate everybody joining in on this Sunday. I hope the session has invigorated a lot of questions, which we all can try to find solutions on. Thank you very much once again. Appreciate it. Thank you, Justice Daga.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, Justice Daga.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.